Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and work it out. So I'm going to follow step 1. We're going to put the numerator in as the dividend. So this numerator is our dividend. So I'm going to go ahead and write this out real quick. I'm going to draw my division symbol. And I'm going to write in 3x squared plus 4. Then I'm going to take the denominator and I'm going to use that as my divisor. So I'm going to put on the outside of the box x plus 5. And now what I want to do is I'm going to look at this first term, which is x, and say, what do I need to multiply x by to get this first term inside, which is 3x squared? So I realize that I need to multiply x by 3x. So I'm going to write that down, 3x, and if I do 3x times x, that's going to give me 3x squared. Notice I did put my parenthesis again, and I put my subtraction symbol. We're going to distribute that -1 in just a minute. Then I'm going to take 3x and multiply it times positive 5. And that's going to give me a positive 15x. Now what you're going to realize here real quick is that you have run into an issue. You realize that up here there's 3x squared, but notice that there's no x. There's just a constant of positive 4. Well, let me tell you, if there is no x in here, that is because x is 0. In other words, instead of they could have wrote 3x squared plus 0x plus 4. But they didn't. And in math, we don't write it that way typically. If it helps you to write it out, you can, if you notice that it's missing. But if it doesn't bother you to do it just like I'm doing it here, just follow my steps. Now I'm going to write it out over here on the side so you can see what I'm talking about. For some of you who may be looking at this going, Mr. H, I still don't understand what you're talking about. So this is what I'm talking about. If I were to rewrite this whole problem, for instance, if I said x plus 5, and inside we had 3x squared plus 0x plus 4. How do I know that's 0x? Well, because 0 times x just gives me 0. And in math, when we got something that just gives us 0, we like to leave it out. Notice if I take away that 0x, it just leaves me with 3x squared plus 4, which is exactly what we had here and what we had in our numerator. So there is a 0x there. It's just insignificant because it doesn't change anything. So we leave it out. So I'm going to rewrite this for you, just like I got it written over here. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Maybe I'm going to draw a line to separate it so we don't get our problems mixed up. It's the same problem. I just added that 0x in there. So minus 3x squared. And then I'll go ahead and say plus 15x. Close parenthesis. And up here I still have the same thing. 3x is what I multiplied to x and to plus 5 to give me the 3x plus 15. Now maybe this way it looks like it makes a little more sense to you, and if you would like to add in 0x or 0 whatever variable they have anytime you run into a situation like this because it helps you, that's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. Now we're going to do the same step on both sides. We're going to distribute this -1. So I'm going to distribute the negative sign. -1 times 3x gives me -3x, and -1 times positive 15 gives me -15x. Same thing over here. -1 times 3x gives me -3x. -1 times positive 15 gives me -15x. So if we do math, on this side I'm going to do it first because you can see how they line up. So 3x squared minus 3x squared gives me 0. That creates a 0 set. And then 0x minus 15x actually becomes -15x. Then I just need to bring down my positive 4, which we have done nothing to that yet. So positive 4. Now over here I don't have that 0x in there, but I know because there's no number, there's no value of x there, I know that it's 0. So I would just know in my head that I just need to bring down my -15x. So I know this would be giving me a 0 set. And I would have said, oh, okay, there's no x's on top. So really, if I do -15x, it's just going to leave me with -15x. And I would just bring down my 4. I kind of shortcut it because I understand what's happening. For those who need to write it out, I'd recommend writing out that 0x. Come up with the same thing. So now we need to do our next step. So our next step is, okay, I'm looking at this once more, and I'm going, okay, I have negative 15x's. What do I need to multiply to this x right in front to give me negative 15x? And the same thing goes over here. What do we need to multiply to x to give us negative 15x? So I hope that when you looked at it, you realize that it's negative 15. So I'm going to write that on both sides. We are going to multiply it by negative 15. Why? Because when I multiply it to x, I want it to make it the same as this leading term in my expression. So negative 15 times x gives me negative 15x. Negative 15 times 5 is going to give me 75. Now for those of you who you may not do a lot of multiplication in your head, that's perfectly fine, right? We could always go to calculate, and we could say, well, I don't know what that is. What's negative 15 times 5? And you go, oh, okay, it gives me negative 75. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down, negative 75. Now, this, of course, is the same problem, so we're going to get the same thing, negative 15x, negative 75. Now, the only thing we have to do at this point is remember to distribute our negative sign on the outside. Because remember that once we find out what to multiply to it to get the equivalent expression, remember that we are always subtracting that. And so since we're subtracting it, we take that negative sign outside and we distribute. So negative times a negative gives you a positive. So this becomes a positive 15x. Negative times negative 75, once again, that becomes a positive 75. So we can change this to a positive, and when we distribute, we change this to a positive. So if we do math from top to bottom, negative 15x plus 15x leaves us with 0 x's. And then if I do positive 4 plus 75, it leaves me with positive 79. The same thing goes for this side. Now, that's a big number that we have left, but it is what it is. So remember, what do we do with our remainder? Because this is a remainder that we have right here. Once we have a remainder and there's no longer a variable with it, at that point we stop, we are finished with our problem, and we simply put this value over our divisor. So if I were to write this out, I would end up having 3x minus 15. And since it's a positive 79, I would say plus 79 over x plus 5. 79 was our remainder. It went to the numerator. And what we had left, right, then we had our divisor, and it goes in the denominator. And that's our final answer for this. Same thing goes here. It's the same problem. We just did it a little bit differently because we added that 0x in there. But it's still plus 79 over x plus 5. So at this point in the video, I hope you feel like you can do one on your own now.